The movie starts with energizing music in the background as Jake and Evie, two people in different places, park their identical bags obviously for a trip. Jake's bag contains an engagement ring while Evie's bag contains a nose. Jake is the co-owner of a new store, JOR, which is due for opening soon. He owns the workshop with his friends Ray and Olivia, who are a couple. He plans with Ray to keep Olivia in the dark while he travels to Phoenix to pick up Ray's surprise engagement ring to Olivia. A nervous Ray calls Jake. He is antsy on the phone as he tells Jake to be careful with the ring. Jake assures him that their plans are in check as he is on his way to the airport to fly back to Los Angeles, their base. Evie, on the other hand, is an assistant producer on a movie set. She receives a call from her friend and makeup artist on set, Barbara. The two are close friends and Barbara sometimes sees Evie as her younger sister. Evie assures her that their prop for their movie set and nose for the Serrano scene is safe in her bag. She promises not to miss her flight or her connection. It's simply Phoenix to Los Angeles, and Los Angeles to Vancouver, piece of cake. We're not. Things do not go easily as imagined. She arrives at the airport in the usual Evie fashion, almost late for her flight. In her haste, she collides with other people as she hurriedly tries to locate her boarding gate. In no time, she heaves a breath of relief when she finds it and finally boards the plane. She keeps her bag in the overhead storage compartment and almost embarrasses herself by falling on the stranger that sits beside her, albeit a handsome stranger, Jake. She apologizes to him and they share a laugh. The elderly woman that sits close to Jake complains to an air hostess about her bag being squashed by Jake's bag. In a bid to help, the air hostess removes Jake's bag from beside the lady's bag and places it on the other side right beside Evie's bag. None of them notice the change, and this is where the drama starts. Two identical bags with very important contents are placed side by side. Jake is a nervous flyer. He hates being confined in tight spaces but tries to bear it for his friend, Ray. He copes by folding napkins. Evie notices his discomfort and initiates a conversation with him. They share a laugh over it as she tells him she loves having nothing to do, no Michael, her boss, to answer to, and certainly no calls every 5 minutes. In no time, they are both in stitches with laughter as they enjoy themselves. Evie shares the story of her first heartbreak with Jake. Time flies by quickly and soon, the announcement comes on that they have arrived in Los Angeles. They appear sad at the announcement as they are having so much fun together. When their plane starts to make a descent, Jake becomes nervous. Evie notices it and hands him her napkin to fold and take his mind off the plane. Jake appreciates her concern. He seems to like Evie but isn't as bold as his friend, Ray, to ask for her number or name. He writes his number on a napkin and proceeds to fold it into a flower. He hands it to Evie and she awes at the thought of receiving flowers even though it smells like pretzels. Their plane lands and Evie rushes out of the plane as she notices that it's almost time for her connecting flight to Vancouver. In her haste, she trashes Jake's flower with his number and picks up a bag from the compartment without checking properly. It happens within a blink. Jake seems unable to stop her even though they both would love nothing else but talk one last time. He is surprised when he finds his bag in the opposite compartment, different from where he left it. He doesn't think too much about it as he trudges out of the plane, unhappy that he has no means of seeing Evie again. Evie looks relieved when she locates her gate and boards the plane. Missing her flight is a no-no as she doesn't want to infuriate her producer Michael. He is already at his wit's end and wouldn't tolerate any tardiness from Evie even though he has a soft spot for her friend, Barbara. Jake arrives at their store, JOR Workshop, and enmeshes himself deep in their store's work. The store's sign has arrived and with less than 2 weeks to open, Olivia is being a worrywart as she wants everything to be perfect. This is almost to Ray's chagrin. Jake almost develops an aneurysm when he realizes that the floor on the side is slanted. Just like Olivia, he considers it a big deal. Outnumbered, Ray agrees to call in some guys to fix it even though it would cost them more than they have budgeted. Evie arrives in Vancouver and makes it to their set right on time. She is excited as she shares with Barbara the story of the nice handsome guy on the plane who made a flower for her. She searches unsuccessfully for the flower in her purse but comes up empty-handed. Not to be perturbed, Evie assures herself that she will find Jake somehow, somewhere, but Barbara is not as romantic as she thinks otherwise. Barbara asks Evie about her date with Ted, a guy from the set's sounds department. Evie is a happily ever after kind of girl, but with no sparks between them. She claims the relationship wouldn't go further. Barbara brings up the bag. She looks excited to see the nose, but she is in for a rude shock. The bag contains men's clothes, but no nose is in sight. Evie is shocked when she realizes that it isn't her bag. In another scene happening almost simultaneously, Ray ribs Jake over his lack of skills connecting with women. He ribs him for writing his number on a napkin instead of giving it to her directly. He is anxious to see the ring, but they are both astonished when Jake finds a nose in his bag. It dawns on him that the bag isn't his while Ray tries to come out of the shock of losing a costly vintage ring. Back at the set, Evie tries unsuccessfully to contact the airline about any mixed baggage, but nothing pans out. She rules out the bag getting mixed up on her Los Angeles to Vancouver flight, and decides to travel back to the Phoenix airport to check things out. Jake also makes calls to the airport, but as usual, no assurances are given. He tries to calm a distressed Ray. He assures him that he will get back the ring. Jake searches the bag to look for clues that might lead him to its owner. He finds the name Everett Jones written on the bag. He concludes that the owner is a male. Good for starters, with a name, Jake feels he is onto something as he places another call to the baggage department. Back at the set in Vancouver, Evie is overcome with nerves as she finds it difficult to break the news to her director, Michael. Michael is a tall and handsome man with salt and pepper hair. Even though he has the hots for Barbara, it still does not save Evie from his wrath. Barbara covers up for Evie. She informs Michael that the nose melted before Evie's return to set. She assures him that plans are already in place to get a new nose the next day. Because the news comes from his lady interest, Michael is calm as he sulks off to break the news to the cast and crew. With the coast clear, Barbara ransacks the bag to get a clue as regards its owner. A look at the t-shirts in the bag reminds Evie of her friend from the plane. Barbara chides her to quit her daydreams and focus on the important work. They find a flyer in the bag and it's from Jake's workshop, the JOR store. The address on the flyer is close to Evie's place in Los Angeles. Relieved that there's some sort of headway, Evie decides that she will return to Los Angeles and visit the store. On the other hand, things are not so rosy for Jake at the JOR workshop. The airline confirms to him that Everett Jones, who works on a set, was on the flight with him. They give him the details of the set in Vancouver where Evie works. But unfortunately, Jake gets the turnaround when he calls the set as they tell him that no Everett works with them. The news disappoints Ray. It seems his highly anticipated proposal wouldn't happen again. Jake quickly assures him that the proposal would hold. He decides to fly to Vancouver and find the elusive Everett Jones and exchange the bags. Ray tries to dissuade him on account of his fear of flying, but he is insistent on fixing his mistake. Evie has a hard time convincing Michael to allow her to travel back to Los Angeles to pick the new nose. After some persuasion from her, he agrees but warns her not to melt it on her way back to the set. Both Evie and Jake miss each other at the Vancouver airport. While Jake arrives in Vancouver, Evie is on her way to Los Angeles. She sits on the same seat Jake sat on his trip. It seems like fate to her when she finds a paper flower just like the one Jake gifted her. Ironically, Jake made the flower during his flight. She smiles as she wonders if it's truly made by Jake. What are the odds? Olivia is confused when she doesn't find Jake around. The store's inspection is soon and she is overwhelmed with all the work they need to get done. Ray makes an excuse for Jake's absence. He assures her that things will work out smoothly with the store. They get into a lover's tiff when they bring up the topic of marriage. Olivia informs him that their friend Krista is engaged after knowing her fiancé for only 6 months. The short time doesn't go down well with Ray. He concludes that the time is too short for marriage to happen. Olivia is stumped by his explanation. She wonders what stage they are in after 6 years of dating, but Ray waves it off. He is nervous as he tries not to let the cat out of the bag to Olivia. She looks weirded out at his unusual behavior, avoiding questions and giving short answers at most. He reluctantly agrees to attend their friend's engagement party on the same day he had in mind to propose to her just to throw her off the scent. Jake arrives at the set and after a weird interaction with a crew member, he gets the directions to the makeup booth. He meets Michael alone in the booth and mistakes him for Everett Jones. Barbara returns with a cup of coffee for Michael. She immediately recognizes the bag when she sees it. She snatches it from Jake and brings out the Serrano nose. Michael is confused when he sees the nose which he was meant to believe melted. Barbara sends him on his way to get the cast and crew ready to shoot the scene. Jake is stunned when he learns from Barbara that the bag belongs to a woman, Evie, and not to an Everett as he thought. Barbara learns that Jake was on the same flight as Evie. She gets suspicious of him and goes into a mama bear mood. She forces him to answer some personal questions. Satisfied with his responses, she deems him suitable for Evie. She sends him on his way back to Los Angeles with the bag. A confused Jake is stunned when he learns that Evie aka Everett Jones happens to be the woman he connected with on the plane, and that she is in Los Angeles already with his bag. Evie gets to Los Angeles and calls Michael. He asks her to return to set that the nose has been returned. Evie doesn't hear him as her phone goes off. She finds her way into the JOR workshop, apparently to continue with her search. She meets Olivia. Olivia claims nobody's bag is missing as she is in the dark about the misplaced bag. Sorry at Evie's disappointed look, she asks her to leave her number with her in case anything pops up. On her way out, Evie notices a beautiful handmade bowl on the shelf. She learns from Olivia that it is made by her business partner. A pregnancy book lying on the cupboard catches Evie's attention. Olivia is embarrassed as she tells her that she isn't married yet but has been dating her boyfriend for 6 years. Evie thinks that the boyfriend and her partner are the same person, Jake. She is drawn back to the calabash. She asks Olivia to sell it to her and Olivia is all too happy to make their store's first sale. With her phone off, Evie doesn't receive the message from Barbara telling her about Jake and the return of the nose. A furious Michael overhears Barbara. He puts 2 and 2 together and confronts her about Evie's lies. He is mad at Evie for leaving work to chase after a guy. Barbara tries to explain things to him but he is adamant. He fires Evie so she can have all the time to search for her plane guy. Evie arrives at her house. She is tired from her uneventful journey so far. She decides to search through the bag. She discovers a box with a beautiful ring in it. With her attention fixed on it, she is startled when her phone rings. It's Barbara. She informs Evie that Michael has fired her from work, but she promises to fix things up. This leaves Evie terrified. Barbara hits her with the news that Jake from the plane was on their set earlier with the nose. She advises Evie to wear a yellow dress to meet Jake the next day as he is on his way back to Los Angeles. She realizes that if Jake works at the JOR workshop, then he must be Olivia's boyfriend. She puts 2 and 2 together and assumes that the ring in the bag is for a surprise engagement to Olivia. Figures why Olivia never knew Jake misplaced his bag, as the engagement was meant to be a surprise. She is heartbroken at the latest development, but she doesn't even fault Olivia as she likes the other woman. Barbara quickly ends the call when she notices Michael approaching her. It's prohibited on set to use sat phones for personal calls. She tries to plead Evie's case to Michael. The two have a bit of history together as they have worked on lots of movies together. Michael confesses that she is his favorite crew member, which explains why he's always around her. Ray is taken aback when he learns that Evie was at the store earlier on account of mixed luggage. He sends a quick message to Jake that the nose guy is a woman. Jake replies immediately that he knows and that he would be meeting her the next day. Relieved at last that the ring would be in his hands soon, Ray watches in dismay as Olivia talks down on the proposal ideas he has in mind. Things are not looking up as he is lost on how best to propose to Olivia. Bright and early the next morning, Evie dresses in a yellow sundress and a jacket and arrives at the workshop. She is nervous as she practices at the door what she would say when she finally meets Jake. Jake bumps into her when he opens the door carrying a box that scatters to the floor. They smile awkwardly when they realize that they are finally meeting. They exchange their mixed bags and Evie decides to go her way. It's quite sad how stilted things are between them. Not yet ready to see her go, Jake invites Evie inside for some coffee. Evie is happy as she follows him inside. He makes her a great cup of coffee while Evie admires the shop. She looks sad as she listens to Jake speak fondly about what she considers as Olivia, while Jake is all about the workshop. She decides that she has no business being with Jake. Since he sounds so in love with Olivia, she assumes that the deadline he is anxious about is the surprise engagement he plans to throw for Olivia. Little does she know that his concerns are actually about their store's opening, which is being delayed. When Jake steps out, Evie notices Olivia's pregnancy magazine on the table. She scolds herself for still talking to a taken guy. She hurriedly leaves the shop. Jake is disappointed when he comes back and finds her gone with her bag. Ray doesn't look too excited when Jake finally hands the ring over to him. Jake notices his foul behavior and asks him about it. Ray is confused about what to do since Olivia seems not to like his proposal idea. Jake tries to assure him that Olivia would love his proposal regardless of how it's done, but Ray insists that it must be perfect. Olivia walks in on them talking. They quickly hide the ring away from her prying eyes. Jake wears a mushy smile on his face when he learns that Evie bought his bowl. Olivia almost gets them caught in their lies, but they luckily wriggle themselves out of it. Evie, on the other hand, is relieved when Barbara informs her that Michael has forgiven her and has asked her to resume work on the set. She predicts a romance between Barbara and Michael, but Barbara denies it. She is scared of starting anything with him since they work together. Barbara tries to cover it up. She is excited to hear about Evie's meetup with Jake. She finds it difficult to believe Evie when she tells her that Jake is about to be engaged. Brokenhearted, Evie plans to go out with Ted from the sound department on another date, but Barbara wouldn't agree to it. She seems to have made a 360 turnaround from her previous stance as she now believes that romance exists. Michael finds Barbara on the phone. He is curious about Evie's search and is sorry when Barbara informs him that things did not turn out as planned. Even he agrees that Ted is a bad idea for Evie. He musters the courage and asks Barbara to go out on a date with him at a real restaurant after work on set. The date idea excites Barbara and she agrees to it. They are both giddy like teenagers going on their first date. Jake is forced to share with Olivia how he met Evie. Well, without talking about the ring, of course. Olivia is shocked to hear Jake claim that Evie sounds disinterested in him. Determined to play matchmaker, she hands him Evie's number to call her. But Jake refuses to make the call. With Ray's help, Olivia snatches his phone from him and shoots a quick message to Evie asking her out on a date. Jake feels uncomfortable with the message. He storms off to get some fresh air while he anxiously waits for Evie to reply to his message. Evie stares longingly at the handmade bowl she bought from the JOR workshop. It's obvious that she still hurts badly about her situation with Jake. Jake spends his day working at the workshop while he keeps looking at his phone expecting anything from Evie. A call, text message, voice note, anything at all. He is disappointed by nightfall when he doesn't receive any feedback from Evie. He considers that Evie is avoiding him and doesn't want to have anything to do with him. The next morning, Evie is running late as she finds it difficult to find a taxi that would take her to the airport. She runs into the lovebirds, Olivia and Ray, who are strolling to work. She is taken aback when Olivia introduces Ray to her as her boyfriend. She has a momentary loss of filter when she asks Olivia if Ray is the boyfriend who wouldn't propose to her. Her Her outburst causes quite a scene as an embarrassed Ray storm off. Evie realizes her mistake and apologizes to Olivia, who waves it off and goes after Ray to apologize, as if things couldn't get worse. Her taxi takes off without her. Olivia's apologies to Ray fall on deaf ears as they enter their workshop. They find Jake, who has been busy making the sign for the shop. Olivia oohs and ahs at the beautiful sign. She informs Jake that Evie is on her way to the airport. Jake seems to have given up as he has heard nothing from Evie. This surprises Olivia, as Evie gave her the impression that she was in Los Angeles to see Jake. A light bulb goes off in her brain when she puts two and two together. She concludes that Evie mistook Jake to be her boyfriend after their first meeting. She is excited as she advises Jake to perform a grand gesture by following Evie to the airport and explaining things better to her. Jake develops cold feet and gives excuses as to why the suggestion wouldn't work. Annoyed at the unromantic men in the workshop, Olivia heads out to speak to the inspector, who comes to inspect their workshop. Evie's day ends up messed up as she misses her flight, and with no other flights that day, she will be traveling to Vancouver the next day. She is terrified as she calls Michael to give him the bad news. He gives her clearance to come back the next morning, but on the condition that she works from Los Angeles, and that she finds Jake and works things out with him. Barbara, who's with Michael back on set, is impressed by his advice to Evie. Overcome with emotions, she moves closer to him and initiates a kiss between them. When she regains her composure, she is embarrassed by her behavior and escapes from her trailer, leaving a surprised Michael, who's still relieving the kiss. The guys are in the finishing stage of setting up their workshop, with Jake taking up more work as a way to work through his heartache. Olivia tries to talk to Ray about Evie's comment earlier, but it's obvious that he is still angry about it. Olivia tells him that she feels pressured when people ask her when they are getting married after dating for 6 years. Ray is infuriated as he informs her that she is free to do something about it, and that the man mustn't be the only one to propose. Hurt, Olivia decides to give him some space as she storms off, leaving him behind. Meanwhile, Jake remains unhappy as all his calls and messages to Evie remain unresponded to. Evie takes Michael's advice and goes to the workshop to find Jake. She finds Ray hard at work. She apologizes to him earlier, but he waves it off. He's relieved that he does not have to go ahead with the proposal, as his proposal idea pales in comparison to what Olivia wants. Evie advises him that Olivia would love it even if it's a simple proposal, as it's real. Jake has a déjà vu moment when he talks to a woman at a store's car park. He tells her about his dilemma with Evie, and she advises him to call her and stop sending messages. He musters up some courage to call her, but when he gets her voicemail, she encourages him to leave her a message. He arrives at the workshop and finds the bane of his thoughts, Evie. He's surprised to see her and tells her about the messages he left her. Evie whips out her phone to confirm and doesn't find any calls or messages from him. They both realize that Jake missed a number and as such has been sending the messages to someone else. Jake is relieved. He is happy that after all Evie doesn't seem angry at him. Since she would be leaving the next morning, he invites her to Olivia's friend's engagement party, since he already offered to be Ray's buffer at the party. Evie agrees promptly and they make plans to meet up later. When she leaves, Ray goes off on Jake for inviting Evie on a first date to an engagement party, but Jake waves it off. Evie gets ready for the party with Barbara's help over the phone. Barbara gives her the gist of her moment with Michael. She complains that since the kiss, it has been awkward between them and she is worried. Evie cheers her up and assures her that things will work out. The party is in full swing with everyone in attendance. Olivia and Ray look uncomfortable as they meet with the newly engaged phony couple. Evie and Jake, on the other hand, are having a swell time, or not. Because of work, Evie is literally on her phone for the greater part of their date. While they watch their friends, Olivia and Ray come to a truce. She informs him that she doesn't need a ring to show his love for her. Evie and Jake's date gets worse as the night progresses. Their conversations are stilted, as they find out that they hardly know much about themselves. They have a run-in with the couple of the hour. Krista is as phony can be, and in no time Evie decides to call it a night so she can meet up with her early flight the next day. They share an awkward hug before she leaves. Olivia and Ray meet Jake, and while Ray laughs at him, Olivia is sympathetic to Jake, who wants more time with Evie. Back at the set, Barbara and Michael run into each other. They are still embarrassed about their kiss as they behave awkwardly towards each other. Evie arrives back on set early the next morning. She explains her disappointment to Barbara about her date with Jake. Barbara tells her about her kiss with Michael and how she ended things with him. Her confession is overheard by Michael as he sneaks up on them. Evie leaves to give them some privacy. Apologies are made as the two hash out their differences and make up. Things are now well between them by the smiles they both sport. Jake's mood does not improve after the awful engagement party date with Evie. Ray teases him about inviting Evie to their opening night, but he doesn't think it's a good idea. He has made up his mind to forget all about Evie and focus on their workshop, but Ray tries to talk him out of it. He gives him some relationship advice based on his longtime relationship with Olivia. Jake is impressed with Ray's long speech, which he considers perfect for a proposal. He considers Ray's idea and sends Evie a flyer of their workshop's opening, inviting her to it. Evie is excited when she receives it, even though she declines the invitation, citing work as her excuse. Jake is disappointed. He deletes the message about missing her that he wanted to send her. Their opening party is a great hit and the friends make a toast to the successful night. The others notice Jake's somber mood. He is disappointed that Evie doesn't make it to the party. Ray advises him to go the extra mile and visit Evie in Vancouver since it's obvious that his mind is elsewhere, and not at the party. Jake has second thoughts about leaving them so soon after opening their store, but they encourage him to go find his happiness in Vancouver. He is excited as he leaves them to go park his bags. Cue Ray and Olivia's surprise when Evie suddenly appears in the store. Ray hurries out to call Jake back while Evie takes her time admitting their works that are being showcased. Jake comes back to the party to pick up his forgotten keys. Their eyes meet and with smiles on their faces, they draw close to each other. Evie couldn't miss the opening of the store. Jake confesses his feelings to her. They have fun as they spend some time getting to know each other better and their families. Olivia and Ray look relieved that Jake finally has a smile on his face. After the party, Jake accompanies Evie home in the rain. They discuss the next time they will meet with their different locations. They share a private moment on the street with the umbrella shielding them from the drizzle. To forestall a repeat of the last time, Jake takes all her contact details including her email. Evie finds it difficult to leave him as she runs back and they share a sweet kiss with smiles on their faces. It's a sweet moment for Olivia and Ray as they take the bull by the horn and pop the question to each other at the same time. While Ray was beating himself up about the perfect proposal, Olivia on the other hand was preparing herself to propose to him. They are both surprised but excited as they exchange rings. Ray comes clean to Olivia about the ring and Jake's baggage. She looks thrilled at its beauty as it adorns her finger. Evie gets a surprise when she boards the plane back to Vancouver. She finds a replica of her bag in the overhead storage compartment opposite her. It's a déjà vu moment as it reminds her of her first experience with Jake. She is thrilled when she sees Jake sitting some rows behind her. He waves at her and switches seats with the lady who sits on the aisle seat beside Evie. His plan works and as they sit close to each other, it's their first flight all over again. Evie stretches her hands to him. They hold hands firmly as the flight takes off. Their love is a sight for sore eyes. It's wonderful how their mixed baggage brought them together.